Good morning, learners. Let's begin today with a new topic, system analysis. I am Dr. Anjum Ahmed, Assistant Professor from the Department of Education, Aligarh Muslim University. So today we will be talking about system analysis. So first I'll be giving you the overview of my presentation and what you as a learner will be going through it. So first we will try to comprehend the concept of a system. Then we will understand what system thinking is. Then, along with it, once you understand what systemic thinking is, we will be able to explain curriculum as a system. And lastly, the last objective would be that you will be able to discern the steps of system approach to instruction. So, let's begin. Now, when we're talking about systemic analysis, now let's have a background view about the historical development that actually took place when we talk about curriculum. Now, I can say the first stage of the curriculum development is the traditional foundation of the curriculum. Now, in this traditional foundation, it is largely shaped by the societal and the cultural expectation in the earlier days, and even right now also. But earlier, there was more overemphasis on it, because earlier curricula was emphasized by and it was shaped by the religious institutions, by our cultural tradition, which needed to be passed from one generation to another. We saw in Greek, we saw in Roman how they were very specific about inculcating citizenship among their learners. So after the traditional foundation, there then came a shift to the industrial era curriculum. Now, you know, in the Industrial Revolution, that was around in 18th, 19th century, the educational system, it evolved to meet the demanding need of the industrial society. Now, what we needed, the curriculum was trying to provide for it. Now, the curriculum, it was standardized and it focused on basic literacy, numeracy, vocational skills. Basically, it wanted to prepare students for the factory, for the industry, and for the clerical work. Then came an era in which it was influenced by the most prominent educational theorist. I'm sure you must have heard about him. Thinkers like John Dewey, Mario Montessori, Vygotsky. So the whole curriculum, it shifted from the philosophy of the traditional teachings to or teacher-centered approach to student-centered approach. And especially in this context, John Dewey in particular emphasized what we know as the experiential learning, suggesting that curricula should be designed to engage the students actively in the learning process. So for that, of course, we have to foster critical thinking ability. We have to foster independent thinking also. So the whole emphasis on how students are supposed to go about in the learning process started to be emphasized by these educational philosophers. Then came the post-World War II developments. Now, you know, after the World War II, the lot of educational reform movements started taking place, which started preparing the students for the complex, rapidly changing world. You know, the world changed drastically after the World War, and we needed the educational support to cater to the need of the diverse society, that the diverse emerging need of the society at that time. So, of course, at that the new curriculum started incorporating scientific and technological advancement. So basically, it reflected that we wanted to equip the students with skills of knowledge-based economy, because at that time, whatever the demand was, the curricula is supposed to provide. Then came the emergence of a system approach to curriculum. This was in 1960s and 70s, which saw the influence of system theory in various fields. So education you cannot negate the fact about education, because when it entered in all the different fields, system approach, system theory, so did system theory appear in education as well. So the curriculum was increasingly viewed not as a static collection. Now here the curriculum started having a new quality, or new quality was recognized. That means became as a dynamic system. And with the, of course, with the input, processes, outputs that could be analyzed and optimized. So that's how the emergence of the system approach to curriculum started taking place. So a curriculum that is one size fit all approach, we no longer, it started letting go of that kind of an approach, and and started moving towards a curriculum which is highly dynamic in nature, which is able to fulfill the education needs of all its learners. So that's the background of the systemic, how the system approach started being introduced into the curriculum. Now let's move ahead. Now, what is the concept of a system? Now, where have you heard this word, system? And you know, everything in this world is a system. And if I was able to connect to your prior knowledge, the first time that probably when you heard the word system is when you talked about the solar system. Or when you must have studied about EVS, you must have studied about ecosystem, right? So basically, if system, like when I'm saying when everything in the world is a system, that means that curriculum or the curriculum design or development can be no exception. So we do have a system in the curriculum as well. So system is any collection of interrelated parts that together constitute a larger whole. So one thing is established, that in a system you have interrelated parts which are basically combined together, which constitute a whole and which affects the overall performance. Now every system has its own element. It intersects, it interrelates, and it interacts. These are the three qualities, I should say, that is more, you can say, that is imbibed in a system, and these are the qualities that the different elements, that is how they establish the relationship. So the success of a system is to achieve its goal, which is determined by its intersection, by its interaction, and by its interrelation of the elements. So system analysis is the way of where you identify the goals of any system and we synthetically work towards achieving that particular goal. So having said that, this will be more clear in the next slide. Now, I have given you a brief concept of the system. Now, let me give you a concrete example of a system, which will help you more to understand. And from that concrete example, we will be deriving the three main characteristics of a system. Now, in biology, I'm sure you must have learned about different kind of systems. We learned about nervous system, we learned about excretory system, circulatory system, or digestive system, and so on. With every biological processes, we do have a system. So let's take an example of digestive system. So from a digestive system, it starts, you know that it starts right from the mouth to the esophagus, to stomach, to intestines, the small, the large, and of course the different organs also that are secreting different juices and different chemicals inside our body, which helps in the digestions, and ultimately the food is excreted out as they excrete out through the anus. So this is all different parts, you can say, like if you start right from the mouth till the esophagus, the stomach, and then of course we have the intestines and the anus. So this is constituting the digestive system. Now every component will be constituting the different parts of the system. So a system has a certain function to perform. All the parts put together, they will perform one function that is known as the digestion. So that established the first characteristic: a system has a certain function to perform. Then a system has many components or many parts which are put together in different way in which it performs the function. Now these parts, like you have seen right from the diagram that I have drawn, that how the different parts are being arranged. You cannot arrange in a haphazard manner. It has to be arranged in a specific manner in order for it to contribute to the efficiency of that particular system. So the component of a system is interrelated and interdependent. Now what does that mean? That means if the certain organ, the efficiency, the function of these different parts will depend on the efficiency of the entire system. That will, it might increase or decrease the digestive system. So this shows that it is interrelated in nature. Everything is interrelated in nature. But a function of one can affect the function of the another. Salivation, if there is excess salivation, it will trigger the juices in the stomach. So function of one will trigger a function of the other part of the system. So that is known as, it is interdependent. It is interdependent on one another. So with this, we have established three characteristics of the system, right? It has a function, it has a component, and how it is interrelated and interdependent. Now, when we talk about the education system, and when the stakeholders talk about how the education system has failed, or if there is any loopholes in the education system, so who becomes the scapegoat? It is the curriculum that becomes the scapegoat. So curriculum is basically a part, you can say it's a part of the teaching learning process, which in itself is a part of a school system, which of course is a part of a larger super system, or you can call is at the entire education system. So the failure of an education system will depend upon the kind of systemic thinking that we have, or the kind of taxonomic thinking that we have. Now, I have introduced two words in your vocabulary: systemic and taxonomic thinking. Now, what is systemic thinking, or what is taxonomic thinking? So let's have a look, and let's proceed further with this. Systemic thinking. There's a paper, Akhil, he wrote a paper, from the University of Indonesia, and he said that systemic thinking is a holistic approach to analysis that focuses on the way that a system constituents, part, intersects, interrelate, how a system works over time with the context of a larger system. Now, this is the proper definition given by Gill. Now, let me make it very easy for you through this activity. Now, if I ask you the question that I want you to draw one straight line plus another straight line, which is equal to, what will come the first thing that comes in your mind, or the first thing that you will draw? One straight line plus another straight line is equal to. Now, these are the 10 options. Now, if you have drawn options from 1 to 9, that means from option from 1 to 9, that means this is an indicator of taxonomic thinker, which is a partial fragmentary. But if you have chosen option number 10, this is an indicator of systemic thinker or total holistic thinker, which actually means how the different aspects, they are considered vertically, horizontally, and diagonally. Now here's another. Akhil has also given this to illustrated the two type of thinkers through this diagram also. Now this is taxonomic thinker, this is systemic thinker. Now in taxonomic thinker, of course, the traits of the taxonomic thinkers are quite evident, that they believe in hierarchy, they believe in categorization, right? How the things are categorized, how they have been arranged in a hierarchy order and in an orderly fashion, Whereas systemic thinkers, they believe more in the holistic perspective. They believe more in relationship, how you're interacting, and the more the target is more towards problem solving. That means they identify the kind of loopholes, if there are, and if there are any loopholes, and through the feedback loop they're able to rectify the loopholes. So this is what we know as the systemic thinker. So either you could be a taxonomic thinker or you could be a systemic thinker. They both have their different advantages and the different traits. Okay, now let's move forward. Now let's look at curriculum as a system. Now, what is curriculum? It is a structured plan that outlines the educational content, goals, learning experience, assessment methods for a specific program, course or program. So basically, it is what? It is a roadmap that is provided to the students how to learn, how they should learn, how their understanding will be evaluated, and what they need to learn. So basically, it's the what, the how, and how it's going to be evaluated. The curriculum and the curriculum development as a system consist of many elements. We have already established that, and these elements, they vary according to the different curricular design or development. So how the curriculum designs and develops are developing the curriculum, that will depend upon the different elements that are included. But in a nutshell, if we want to say what are the common, you can say four elements in the curriculum. So we have the objectives, we have the course and the materials, we have the methods and the evaluation. So these are the commonly curriculum as a system consists of these four elements. Now let's move forward to system approach to instruction. Now, system approach to the design and analysis of teaching learning process is the basis of the great majority of the modern educational technology related development. Now, what does the system approach actually focuses on? It focuses on the learner, it focuses on the content, the learning experience, the effective media and the instructional strategies. So basically, if a system incorporates all these components, in it itself becomes becomes energized towards continuous self correction and improvement. And the system approach to instruction, the teacher has to plan completely the utilization of the selected resource material. So, what is the role of a teacher? We will look into that is another, the second part of the lecture, in which we'll look into the role of a teacher. Why is it so important in the system approach to instruction? So, your system approach, it involves continuous evaluation of learning outcomes and utilization of knowledge, which is gained by the analysis of the result. So, in order to achieve the objectives, the system approach has to get involved or has to make a continuous evaluation of the learning process. So, this is where we say that it is continuously self-correcting itself and it is improving. That's a thing. That's the dynamism of the system approach. Now, let's move forward. Now, the last objective of this presentation is the how you will be able to discern the steps that are involved in order to construct or in order to use the system approach in the instructional system. Now you have a conceptual map that is drawn, the flow chart is also drawn, and different steps are there. So let's first look into the steps. And yes, before going through the steps, let me first tell you about an important concept that different schools of thoughts are talking about when it comes to learning. So here my concern is the school of thought, behaviorist school of thought and cognitivist school of thought. Now the behaviorist school of thought of learning, they their objective or their inclination is that when the learner is learning, it starts with an initial initial, you can say, behavior, and the learning is taking place in which there is a change in a person's behavior that is taking place. Whereas cognitivist theory, it talks about the school of thought talks about learning when it is taking place, there is a change in the cognitive structure of the learner. So the behavioral school of thought also talks about how the environment plays a very important role in the learning process of the learner. So it is the environment, how the environment can be manipulated also in the learning process. So a learner can learn in the natural environment, or it can be a controlled environment in which the learning experience can be planned to enhance the learning and to bring about the behavioral change. Whereas the cognitives school of thought, they do talk about how the environment is important, and the environment, it's not only the outward, the overt behavior that changes, but it's also the internal structure that changes. Now, the internal structures or the schemas that are changing, that affects the learning, not only at the present, but also in the future-oriented learning that takes place, that can take place in the same environment or a different environment. Now, why am I saying this? Because now you will understand that when we are using system approach in the instructional, to plan out the instructional design, we start first with specifying the output or the expected terminal behavior. That's the thing that we start first with. What change will occur in the terminal behavior of the learner when they undergo through this particular kind of a curriculum? And it could be if you're planning a curriculum for class 9 or for class 10. So we have to understand that by the end of this particular course, the student will be able to, we predict, and all the objectives that are framed according to the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domain. Now coming to step 2, that is preparation of evaluation procedure. Once you have fix the terminal behavior, or you have predicted the terminal behavior, of course, in order to evaluate the terminal behavior should be observable and should be measurable, and for that we have to first prepare the evaluation procedure. How are you supposed to evaluate? Now, this evaluation procedure will also provide the feedback to the systemic designer, right? He'll be able to understand the effectiveness of his the entire program that he is chalking out, and the feedback will also provide him the he can take the feedback in between the process or by the end of the process. So if you're taking in between each step of the process, this is known as formative test, or if you're taking by the end of the process, that is known as the summative test. If the systemic designer is using the formative test or the summative test, this is something that I think you're very familiar with. Formative test, you can say it's almost like in schools we have unit test, right? You have sessionals, you have assignments, you have projects, and at the summative test is the end or the annual exam, that tests the overall performance. So basically, you're preparing for the evaluation procedure at the end. Then comes the third step, that is identifying the input specification. Now see, now we are coming back to the initial behavior of the learner. What will be the initial behavior of the learner? What will be his prior knowledge, his skills, his attitude? That needs to be determined, and that needs to be identified at this stage. Once you know that, because we have talked about the terminal behavior, we've talked about the evaluation procedure, now comes the initial behavior, or the starting point of that particular, how the learner is starting with a particular set of you can say a set of notions, set of, you can say, the ideas that he has, the knowledge, the skills, and so on. Then comes designing the process alternative. Now, the whole process, right from the initial to the terminal, the entire process is supposed to be designed. What are you designing? You're designing the kind of learning experiences that you are supposed to provide in that particular curriculum framework. For example, this can be cleared by an example. If a teacher wants to teach structure of a flower, right? Or the life cycle of a flower, how the flower is booming and everything. So other than, so the process, designing the process alternative will be like she'll be able to design a lecture. She'll be about the resource materials that are required, the different teaching aids, or if there is a botanical visit that is supposed to be, field work is there, or if kind of a any kind of a media or video that she wants to show in the class, PPT and everything. So basically all that is being designed in the designing the process alternative. Okay. Now the fifth part is selection of the best alternatives. Now why we are calling it as selection of the best alternative? Why? From the set of alternatives we have to select the best. Now selection meaning there will be some kind of a criteria. Usually the criteria you in hand is time availability and the resources that are available. So basically when it comes from the selecting the best alternative, we have to talk in terms of, for example, the resources. What are the resources that are available to you? It could be the ICT resources, or it could be resources in the form of a hardware, software, or the different facilities, infrastructures that is present in the school. That also comes under this particular thing. Secondly, of course, will be the regarding the strength of the class also, because there are many things that we plan according to the strength of the class. If you have 20 students, 20, 25 students, there are many things that can come in a teacher's mind how she can teach. For example, classification of a plant kingdom, or like I said above, when she was to teach the different parts of the flower. So it's easy for her to get the sample, to get the specimen, to distribute among the students and engage them in this kind of a thing. But similarly, if the strength increases from 20, 25, if there are 80 students in the class, now you see that there is more, you can say, pressure on the resources also. How is she supposed to control the class? How is she supposed to ensure that whatever she's teaching, it is being learned by the learners? See, things don't just doesn't matter that a teacher comes in the class and she's performing a demo, or she's performing or showing a specimen, and it is ending there. The main purpose is that every learner is able to understand what the teacher is teaching. It is supposed to enter in their behavior. It is supposed to connect with their prior knowledge. Then thirdly, after the class, and one more thing, even in the class, when we have a class of a small class, so of course a teacher can use a small screen also. But when the class size increases, of course the whole area, or you can say the screen that you have to show the video, that also has to be visible. Otherwise it won't suffice, or it won't satisfy that you have performed a good. So using the resources optimally is important, because if you don't do it, it won't suffice whether you're using it as a good demonstration. Now it also depends on the topic that you're teaching, because the availability of the resources will depend upon the discipline and the topic. That is another consideration that we have to keep in mind when we are selecting the best alternative. Then in the best alternative comes also when a teacher is required to teach a particular topic, because now we are using interdisciplinary approach and multidisciplinary approach. So probably a teacher, she might not be having a particular skill set in a particular area. So, and if her colleague has that particular skill set, so she can also include that colleague in this process of teaching, which is what we call as the team teaching. That also becomes the one of the best alternative. So you see, every stage the teacher is deciding how is she supposed to teach the particular content matter to the learners, and how is she supposed to satisfy each and every student's educational need. And all the learners, they come up with different learning style. Even I'm sure there are many of the students who have different kind of a learning style. Some of you, you like to listen to the lectures, or some of you want to see the visual, what is ma'am writing and what is ma'am drawing. So that is, and some, they want to actually practice it. They want to do it, kinesthetic learners. So for them, experimentation, project was, they really engage into this kind of a thing. And speaking of which, and even providing projects or providing assignments, that also comes under the kind of alternative things that we are planning, and we have to choose the best alternative among them. Then comes the sixth, that is planning for the learning experiences. Now this is the learning experiences now we have to plan. Now, once you have selected the best alternative, let us make the learning materials. Now we have to make the learning material, the lectures, the videos, or it could be the different teaching aids that we have, the supplementary aids, or the chalkboard summaries, that the workbooks, the worksheets, and everything. So basically, we are planning for that particular learning experience, the best one that you have chosen. Now we are planning the learning experiences. Now, the seventh stage, that is the tryout. In other words, we call it the field tryout. Why? Because from the laboratory, we are entering into the field. Now, why we are doing this? Because we need to conduct this pilot study. Now, let us see whatever we have done from all this, and let us try to experiment it and do it in a group of students of 40 and 50 before implementing on a larger whole. Right? So once we are doing that, and we try to, that is known as the tryout, the field tryout. So this is where, and if there is any revision that is to be made, we conduct that particular revision. Now, even at this stage, we won't say that our system approach is the perfect one, because at every stage, even after the revision, it is perfect. We can implement to the larger audience. And like I said, this is one main characteristics of system approach, is the dynamism, is how it is changing. If there's another thing that with time you want to introduce another evaluation procedure, or you want to have another, you came up with another alternative, and you want to choose that alternative as the best alternative, so you have to revisit again. So in the revision, you have to revisit again to the first point, that is formulation of instruction objectives, and we go again. The same procedure is followed till the tryout and the revision. So you see, the revision, with the revision comes the implementation of the system. As it is being revised, the field tryout, and the revision is made, and then we are implementing it. Any changes is to be made, we start right from the top, and we come to the bottom till we are planning everything right from the evaluation procedure, specification, and everything. And always remember, whatever we are planning, whenever we are implementing, the thing is that everything is observable. Everything is measurable. Why? Because that was the first stage in which we specified the expected terminal behavior of the learner. If the behavioral change is not, see, and we are coming back to that same school of thought. So, behavioral change is supposed to occur. Cognitivist school of thought said cognitive structure change is supposed to occur. So, if these both changes are the changes are occurring, then only we can say that the learning is taking place. So, just a quick recap, we did talk about the system, we talked about the systemic thinking, and through that activity, you must have understood what systemic thinkers are and what taxonomic thinkers are. And then we talked about the system approached curriculum as a system and the different steps that are required to use the system approach in the instructional system designer. So with this, I have completed this lecture on system analysis part 1, and I'll be meeting you again in the part 2 of my lecture of system analysis. Happy learning and have a nice day. Thank you. Okay, before ending, these are the references. So if you want to have a detailed thorough read on this particular topic, you can revisit the paper that I talked about, Akhil Bure Nation and Surya Sumantri. And also you can also refer to the e-Gyan Kosh, in which the material has been uploaded of system analysis, which has explicitly given very beautiful concrete examples of system analysis. So with this, I come to the end of my presentation. I'll be meeting you again in the part 2 of system analysis. And till then, happy learning and have a nice day.